The skies were overcast as a crowd gathered along the narrow bridges of Paris, all peering curiously into the waters below. Before we continue, please take some time to subscribe to Dailydose, like, and share this video. Something unusual was happening at the Canal Saint-Martin, something that hadn't been done in years. As pumps kicked into action and the murky green surface began to recede, onlookers stood frozen, their breath catching as the first objects emerged from beneath the water. Whatever was hiding at the bottom had remained untouched for over a decade. But now, Paris was ready to reveal its buried secret. The Canal Saint-Martin has been part of the Parisian landscape since the days of Napoleon. Commissioned in 1802, the 4.5-kilometer waterway was built to provide fresh drinking water to a growing population, but it also became a vital artery for transporting goods across the city. Over time, as technology evolved and the city modernized, the canal became more of a romantic relic than a necessity, a scenic landmark flanked by cafes, footbridges, and street musicians. But beneath the charming surface of cobblestones and willows, something darker had been accumulating. Paris drains the canal every 10 to 15 years to clean out debris and waste something locals had seen before, but this time something felt different. The last draining had taken place in 2001, when workers pulled out over 40 tons of trash, including war relics, coins, even an abandoned car from the World War I era. Now, 15 years later, residents wondered what else could be lurking under the surface. And as the first ripples of muddy water pulled back, the answers began to emerge. It took over $10 million in several months to lower the canal's water level by 3 million cubic feet. On the 7th of January, the process began, and word spread quickly. By the time the final feet of water drained away, thousands had come to witness it. Phones out, cameras ready. What they saw was like a surreal, submerged museum of Parisian history and urban decay. First came the fish. Workers gently waded through the remaining shallows, carefully rescuing thousands of carp, trout, and bream. Each was weighed, cataloged, and relocated to safer waters upstream. But once the living creatures were moved, the real show began. As the last inches of sludge pulled away, the skeletal frames of dozens of bicycles came into view. Some were modern, others rusted almost beyond recognition. They weren't just random junk, they were part of the city's Vela bike-sharing program launched in 2007. Of the 14,500 bikes once distributed across the city, hundreds had mysteriously vanished. Now, many of them were resurfacing from the bottom of the canal. But the surprises didn't stop there. Mopeds, wheelie bins, shopping carts, and even toilets began to appear. It was as if the canal had become a dumping ground for every kind of urban relic imaginable. An old office chair sat twisted in the mud, its fabric torn and moss-covered. A vintage stereo lay broken beside it. Then came something more bizarre. A locked suitcase, bloated and coated in grime. When workers cracked it open, even they recoiled at the smell. No one wanted to guess what it had once held. And then there were the motorcycles. Not one, but 2 motorbikes were dragged from the canal's floor reach, stripped, rusted, and barely intact. Witnesses speculated they'd been stolen and dumped, possibly even during the riots of earlier decades. "It's like some strange underwater junkyard," one onlooker told reporters. "You can't help but wonder how all of this got here and why no one noticed." As the cleanup continued, more mundane yet equally strange items surfaced. Glass bottles by the thousands, traffic cones, shopping bags, and even a child's stuffed toy idly preserved in the muck. The surreal combination of innocence and decay fascinated everyone watching. And yet, despite the amusement, it was also sobering. This wasn't just a quirky cleanup. It was a revealing look at the way people interact with the world around them, how something as iconic and romanticized as the Canal Saint-Martin could quietly collect the refuse of daily life until it was hidden in plain sight. The cleanup effort carried on, and with each passing day, the canal gave up more of its secrets. Workers descended deeper, draining the final feet of murky water until only puddles and thick sludge remained. What had once been a picturesque slice of Paris now looked like the aftermath of a flood, muddy, chaotic, and oddly mesmerizing. But, as fascinating as the objects were, the bigger story was what they revealed about the city itself. Among the piles of refuse and forgotten items, officials realized that Paris was facing a deeper problem. The sheer amount of waste that had settled into the canal over the past decade was alarming. Thousands of bottles, discarded household goods, and broken electronics had found their way into the water, creating a ghostly time capsule of urban neglect. City officials used the opportunity to sound the alarm. Environmental groups pointed out that canals like St. Martin weren't just historical relics, they were functioning ecosystems and public spaces. "We can't let this happen again," said Celia Blau, Paris's deputy mayor in charge of the environment. "If we all do our part, we might even be able to swim in the canal one day." It was a hopeful message, but one that came with a harsh visual reminder of what happens when we stop paying attention. Yet, not all the findings were grim. Some discoveries sparked joy and curiosity, like a vintage camera pulled from the silt. Covered in muck but surprisingly intact, it made people wonder if any photos had survived on the roll inside. A collector's item, or perhaps a family heirloom that had slipped into the water unnoticed decades ago? Then there was a pristine teddy bear, strangely untouched by time, its glass eyes staring blankly from the mud. It raised one simple but haunting question. Who did this belong to? For many watching from the banks, it wasn't just about trash, it was about the stories. Every item had once meant something to someone. Each rusted object was a tiny mystery, a dropped memory, a deliberate discard, or a forgotten relic from a moment long past. The canal had become a mirror, reflecting not only Paris's waste, but also its history, humanity, and secrets. Even the workers, hardened by long days in sludge and cold water, admitted they were surprised. One joked, "We found enough parts to build a small house down here." Another added, "This is more archaeology than cleanup." And in many ways, he was right. By the time the final few items were hauled out, over 40 tons of debris had been removed. Everything from street signs to broken safes to shopping carts had been cataloged and cleared. The fish were safely relocated. The canal locks were renovated. The water slowly returned, clean and clear, as if nothing had happened. But for those who had witnessed it, the memory lingered. Locals and tourists alike couldn't stop talking about what they had seen. Social media exploded with photos of strange finds and muddy discoveries. Artists began sketching the scene. Schools brought children down to talk about pollution and history. And slowly, the Canal St. Martin returned to its usual rhythm: sunlit waters, strolling couples, cafes buzzing with life. Except now, everyone knew what lay beneath. The canal had become more than just a postcard-perfect attraction. It was a reminder that even the most beautiful places have layers. Some are bright and celebrated. Others are buried and forgotten. And once in a while, with the right effort, those secrets come to the surface, telling us more about who we are than we ever expected. And as the water once again shimmered under the Parisian sun, the city exhaled a little wiser, a little cleaner, and perhaps a little more curious about what else might be hidden beneath the surface of the everyday.